Hi, I'm Mara. I was 24 and 9 months pregnant when my own father dialed 911 because an envelope of cash went missing. My stepmother smiled like she'd won a contest as the cuffs clicked around my wrists. I begged Dad, please think of the baby. He looked past me like I was a stranger. Before we go deeper, tell me what time you're listening and where you're from. Drop it in the comments. I read them all. It had rained since morning. The gutters on our old duplex in Harbor Ridge coughed and gurgled, and the windows hummed under the wind. I perched on the sunken end of the plaid sofa with my swollen feet on a pillow. A chipped mug of peppermint tea cooled on the crate we used as a table. I wrote baby names in a spiral notebook balanced on my belly and crossed them out just as fast. Nothing felt right. Nothing in that house had felt right for months. I told myself to stay quiet. 2 more weeks, I thought, then I'd be out. I'd save every tip from the diner, find a studio, and give my daughter something that felt like peace. The front door banged open. My heart jumped. Dad, Gideon Hale, 58 forearms like lumber stomped in with mud on his boots. His mouth was a hard line. "Where is it?" he said. "No hello?" "No, how are you feeling?" "Where is what I asked?" pen still hovering over a list of names. The church fund, he snapped, lifting a worn leather checkbook and a folded flyer. 500 in cash was in the blue envelope on the hall table. Gone. Sabrina drifted in right on cue. She was 45, always perfect hair, always perfume that hit the air 2 seconds before she did. She leaned on the doorway, lips tilted. Mara mentioned she was short on money for baby things, she said lightly. Timings? Interesting. My stomach tightened. "I didn't touch your envelope," I said. My voice came out even. I'd practiced that tone since I moved back in. Sabrina's eyes slid to my belly. "Unmarried, no plan. Now a thief." She let the last word hang. I set the notebook aside and pushed myself up. The room spun for a second. "Dad, you know me?" He didn't answer. He stared at the wall like the truth was hiding there. The furnace clicked on and blew lukewarm air that never warmed anything. The funny thing, Sabrina went on pretending to pick lint from her sleeve, is the security camera by the garage caught movement at noon. Guess who was home at noon? "I work the lunch shift," I said. Asked Dell at the diner. "Check the cameras." She shrugged. Maybe they glitched. He looked at the phone on the wall. His jaw flexed. The sound of the rain got louder, like the weather wanted to drum me out of the house. "Dad," I said, stepping closer. "We can solve this without." He lifted the receiver. "You're really calling the police?" My voice cracked. I swallowed hard. "Please, I'm due any day. If you didn't take it, you have nothing to worry about," Sabrina said, smiling like a teacher giving a pop quiz. She knew I'd fail. He dialed. The pulse in my neck thudded. My daughter shifted under my ribs like she could feel the room turning. Through the window, I saw porch lights blink on across the street. Curtains moved. Harbor Ridge loved a show, and we were center stage. Sirens wailed somewhere beyond the fog. Red and blue washed over the living room. I wrapped my arms around my belly and told myself to breathe. The door opened. 2 officers stepped in rain on their jackets. One was young with tired eyes. The other had that stiff calm I'd seen on traffic stops. "Ma'am," the older one said, "we got a call about a missing envelope." I didn't take anything I said. "Check the cameras. Call my boss. I can show you my shift times." Sabrina sighed, all wounded patience. "We're just trying to help her," she told them. "She's under a lot of stress." Dad didn't look at me. "Do what you have to do," he told the officers. The younger cop, his name tag read, Lenaro, shifted uneasy. "We can take statements." Sabrina pointed at the hallway table. "Look at the drawer. She's always rummaging." The older officer asked for ID. I pulled my wallet from my robe pocket with shaky hands. He stepped aside to radio dispatch. The rain softened for a moment, and then the wind shoved against the siding, a low groan through the studs. "Dispatch shows a temporary protective order," he said when he returned. "Filed yesterday. Petitioner Gideon Hale." I blinked. "What?" Sabrina made a soft, sad sound. "We hoped it wouldn't come to this, sweetheart." My insides went cold. I didn't even know about a hearing. "It's temporary," the officer said. "But it says no contact while under investigation for theft and harassment. We'll need you to come with us." "I live here," I said. "Where am I supposed to go?" Sabrina touched her husband's sleeve. "We'll pack her things," she said. "For the baby's sake." My legs started to tremble. "Dad, please." I reached for him out of habit. He stepped back like my hand was fire. "Hands behind your back," the officer said gently. "We'll do this quick." Cold steel closed around my wrists. My fingers went numb. I looked at my father, my first protector, my last line, and found only the side of his face. He stared at the floor and said nothing. On the portage, the rain hit me like pins. Neighbors watched from behind screens. Mrs. Alvarez held her little dog like a baby. Someone filmed. The flash from a phone lit the dark for a second, then faded. In the cruiser, the vinyl seat stuck to the back of my thighs. My stomach tightened. Not a contraction, nerves. I told myself that. I pressed my cuffed hands to the curve of my belly as far as the chain allowed. "Hey, baby," I whispered. "We're okay." At the station, the lights were too bright. The air smelled like bleach and wet wool. Officer Linaro walked a step slower to match my pace. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "If there's a PO, we have to." "I didn't steal," I said. My throat burned. "Sabrina hates me. She's been pushing him to kick me out for months." He didn't argue. He opened a door to a small room with a metal bench. "We'll process you. Then we'll see about a call." "Can I call my sister?" I asked. "Tess will come." He looked toward the desk sergeant, then back at me. "We'll ask." The minutes stretched. The clock on the wall ticked like boots on tile. A woman down the hall laughed too loudly at something. A copy machine whirred and stopped. A guard slid a paper across the counter to Linaro. He frowned. "No outgoing calls without the petitioner's consent," he read. He glanced at me regretful. "Says it right here." Of course it did. They took my laces and the hair tie from my wrist. The bench in the holding cell was thin and cold. My lower back ached. I shifted, trying to find a position that didn't feel like my spine was being pried open with a spoon. Through the tiny window, I could see the street. Dad's truck idled at the curb. Sabrina stood under an umbrella, dry and perfect, speaking into her phone with quick, delighted lips. When she looked up at the station glass, our eyes met. She lifted 2 fingers in a tiny, mocking salute. I closed my eyes and pictured the blue envelope. I pictured the garage camera. I pictured the ceramic pig by the pantry, where Dad kept spare bills for the soda machine at work. I pictured Sabrina's manicured hand gliding over whatever wasn't hers. Footsteps stopped outside my cell. Linaro appeared with a foam cup of water. "Drink," he said. "You need to keep hydrated." "Officer," I whispered, "please check the camera." I asked, he said. "Your stepmother says the feed corrupted around noon. We'll still pull it." "Convenient," I said softly. He didn't disagree. Hours blurred. The rain eased. The building quieted to hums and clicks. I folded the thin blanket over my knees and tried to breathe through the ache in my back. A voice at the desk carried down the hall. Familiar. Male. "I'm here for Mara Hale," it said. "I'm her cousin, Noah Reyes." My head lifted. Noah was 22, a calm face in loud rooms. I'd babysat him when I was 13, and he was small and careful with model cars. I couldn't see him from my angle, but I heard his low tone steady and insistent. Papers rustled, a stamp thumped, shoes squeaked on linoleum. He slid into view a minute later, separated from me by glass and bars. He didn't smile. His eyes were full of that mix of worry and resolve I knew from childhood disasters. The guard let him stand close. We both pressed forward like kids at a window. "Mara," he said softly, "listen to me. Don't break." "I didn't take anything," I whispered. "I know." He lowered his voice. "Tess texted me. She's digging. There's something off with Sabrina's bank transfers." And he glanced toward the desk. "There's a voicemail." From who I mouthed. He just shook his head. "I'll be back in the morning. Hold on." Sabrina's perfume arrived before her shape did. She swanned into the hall, like smoke, smiling at the officers, tapping her umbrella dry. "Checking on the mother-to-be," she said to no one in particular. Such a shame. She looked at Noah, measuring him, then at me. "You always wanted attention, darling," she cooed. "Now you have it." Noah didn't blink. "We're done," he told her, calm as a closing door. She laughed. "You'll see," she whispered to me, eyes glittering. "The baby will be better off with us." My hands went instinctively to my stomach. Heat rose behind my eyes, but I held her gaze. "Over my body," I said. "That can be arranged," she said almost sweetly, and turned away. I lay back against the cold cinder block and listened to the building breathe. Somewhere, a printer spit out a page. Somewhere, a phone rang and stopped. I counted the seconds between the ticks of the clock and the small kicks under my palm. I told my daughter the truth in a steady voice. We are not broken, we are waiting. Around dawn, the bench felt harder, the air thinner. I shifted and a bolt of pain shot across my abdomen. Not nerves, real, sharp, deepening. I gripped the edge of the bench, teeth clenched. The next wave came faster, wrapping iron bands around my middle. The clock blurred. Officer, I called, breath-catching. I think it's time. Boots pounded down the corridor. Keys rattled. The door scraped. Hands reached for me, careful now, kinder than the night before. And that's how my labor began, locked behind a door my father had asked them to close. The siren that took me from the cell sounded like a dare. Linaro shouted for a medic. The door clanged open, and cool air rushed in, as if the night itself wanted me out. A contraction bent me in half. He caught my elbow, voice steady, asking how far apart they were. I could barely answer. 2 minutes, maybe less. Sweat cooled on my neck. He uncuffed me, slid a blanket over my shoulders, and talked to me in short, calm lines that cut through the panic. You're okay. Eyes on me. Breathe in 4. Breathe out 4. The paramedics loaded me on the stretcher, clipped a monitor to my finger, and rolled fast. Fluorescent lights skimmed across the ceiling tiles like markers on a road I didn't choose. The ambulance smelled like plastic and pine cleaner. The medic asked about my prenatal care. I told her I'd made every appointment I could, that Dr. Henley at County had said the baby was head down and stubborn. She smiled like that was good news. The wheels thumped over seams in the floor. I pressed my palms to the sides of the stretcher, rode the next wave, and tried to keep my voice low. I did not want Sabrina's words in my head, but they slipped in anyway. The baby will be better off with us. I pictured her standing dry under that umbrella, while the rain soaked my hair and cuffs. Rage rose like heat, then shifted into something colder. Focus. Get the baby here. Everything else waits. The doors swung open at County, and the world turned bright and fast. A nurse with a tight bun and kind eyes took the lead. Name is Carla, she said, and her tone told me I could lean on it. She set boundaries in one breath. She's in custody, but she's my patient. Nobody in this room, unless she says so. Linaro nodded and planted himself outside the curtain like a quiet wall. 2 monitors beeped. A belt tightened around my belly. The rhythm of my daughter's heart skipped and galloped through the speaker, wild and beautiful. Carla's hands were swift but gentle. She checked dilation, winced for me, and said we were moving. 6 centimeters, good pattern, baby low. We're doing this. Another nurse placed an IV. Someone asked me about a birth plan. I almost laughed. My plan is she breathes, and I do not die, I said. Carla grinned. That's our plan too. The doctor swept in, introduced herself as Henley's partner on call, checked the monitor, and told me I was strong, that she'd seen harder nights and well. The words clipped to my spine and held me up. Between contractions, my mind wandered to the edges of old memory. Gideon showing me how to fix a leaky faucet when I was 10. Gideon teaching me to parallel park in the strip mall lot. Gideon packing my room the spring I moved back in, putting my past into boxes like it was clutter. The next contraction broke the picture. I breathed how Carla taught me. In for 4. Hold for 2. Out for 4. My fingers ached from gripping the rails. A shadow shifted at the doorway. Noah's face appeared pale and determined. He stayed outside the line on the floor, a sign that said, "Visitors stop here." He lifted a hand, 2 fingers pressed to his lips, then to his chest, a signal from when we were kids that meant I'm with you. Carla glanced at me. Your call, she said. I nodded. Let him in. He kept his voice low and quick. Tess found the backup feed, he said. Sabrina lied. The garage camera uploads to a cloud account. It didn't glitch. There's footage, and there's something else. Transfers from the church fund to a store card in her name. Dates match Gideon's deposit schedule. My mouth went dry. Proof, I said. He raised a flash drive like an answer. He had printed screenshots too, sealed in a see-through folder. Another contraction hit hard and tore a sound from my throat I didn't know I could make. Carla coached me through it, and then cut a look at Noah that said, You've got 10 seconds. He used 9. There's also a voicemail, he said. Sabrina bragging to someone that you'd be out before the baby came. The hair on my arms rose. He put the folder on the counter by the sink out of the splash zone and backed up to the line. I wanted to kiss his forehead and bless him like the elders at church used to, but the next wave knocked everything else away. An orderly drew the curtain aside, and a hospital social worker slid in with a clipboard. Her badge said Mendez. She had careful eyes and a tired smile, like she had seen people at their worst, but still believed in better. She asked gentle questions about support housing and who to call. I answered between breaths. I have a sister, Tess. I have a cousin, Noah. I have a job. I do not have my father. Carla looked at Mendez when I said that, and something like understanding moved between them. The curtain scraped again. Sabrina's perfume arrived like an alarm before her mouth did. She stepped past the line as if it were decoration. Her voice dropped to syrup. We're here for the baby, she told Mendez. Gideon and I will take temporary custody while Mara gets help. Lenaro blocked her with one hand, polite and firm. Not your room, ma'am. Patient decides. Sabrina tried to smile past him. She framed it as community concern. Church funds stolen. Unstable environment. Mendez didn't flinch. She asked me if I wanted Sabrina here. No, I said. Sabrina laughed under her breath, then turned sharp. She told Mendez a judge had already issued restrictions. Mendez read the paper and said a restriction is not a custody order, and patient consent rules apply. The doctor looked up from the monitor and told everyone who wasn't aiding labor to clear out. The staff moved like a tide. Sabrina's heels clicked their protest, then faded. When the curtain settled, the room breathed again. I cried for 10 seconds, and then I stopped because the next thing asked everything of me. Hours thinned into minutes. The pain changed shape, lower and heavier, a freight train dropping from the mountain into the valley. Carla said it was time. The doctor donned a face shield. I folded forward and reached for the rope they kept at the head of the bed, a soft blue length, that gave my hands somewhere to put the fear. Push when you feel it not before, Carla said. I did. I pushed like I was swimming to shore. I pushed like the only way out was through. The monitor dipped, then rose, and the room got quieter in that special way rooms do, when everyone in them decides together not to panic. The doctor's voice became a metronome. Good. Again. Little more. Stop. Breathe. I obeyed. An oxygen mask grazed my mouth. The plastic smelled faintly of lemon. I tasted salt. I thought of Tess whispering jokes in dark theaters. I thought of Noah's small hands sorting screws on Gideon's workbench while the radio hummed. I thought of a name I had scribbled and crossed out, then written again in the margins. Iris. Hardy and bright. The next surge came like a wave that picked up the whole bed. I wrote it. I roared in a voice that felt older than my bones. The burn hit and then released. A sudden weight slid away, and a smaller weight arrived on my chest, warm and fierce and new. Silence held for a breath, and then a cry rose high and thin and perfect, slicing every rope that had tied me to fear. The doctor laughed softly. We have a girl, she said. Strong lungs. Carla rubbed her back with a towel, and the sound grew louder. I looked at a face that felt like a door opening. She was red and wrinkled and furious. She was beautiful. Iris, I whispered, you made it. She quieted at my voice, blinked with heavy lids, and latched with a determination I recognized as my own. The world shrank to skin and heartbeat and the whisper of the towel. For a moment, there was no courthouse, no envelope, no umbrella. Only us. When the moment widened again, Mendez stood near the sink, watching with a small smile. The kind that knew storms do not surrender easily. Lenaro hovered at the threshold, eyes damp, pretending he was checking his radio. The doctor finished and handed Carla a form. Carla brought it to me and explained what I was signing in simple lines. Birth certificate, vaccines, hearing test. My hands shook, but the pen found the boxes. As I signed, Gideon's shadow crossed the curtain. He did not come in. He stood just outside where I could see the edge of his coat and the scuffed toe of his boot. He cleared his throat like he might say my name. He didn't. He kept standing, a man drawn by gravity to a daughter he'd thrown to the wind. Mendez noticed him and raised her chin toward me. Your call, she said again. I looked at Iris. I looked at the boot. Not yet, I told Mendez. Her nod was crisp. She stepped out and spoke to him in a low voice. The curtain stayed closed. For the first time in months, the boundary held. Sabrina tried once more. I heard her voice sharpen in the hall as she argued with Mendez about a petition. Mendez said the earliest she could get a hearing would be tomorrow. She said evidence matters. She said newborns stay with mothers unless there is danger. Sabrina lowered her voice then, and the words slipped through like knives. She's a thief, she'll run. Take the baby now and thank me later. The nurse at the desk coughed loudly, a sound that meant I can hear you. The voices moved away. Noah appeared again at the line, fingers wrapped around the folder like a lifeline. He mouthed 3 words. We have enough. It landed inside me like rest. I kissed Iris's forehead. Her tiny fingers closed around my thumb, then opened and closed again like she was practicing hello. My chest ached in the good way. Carla dimmed the lights and told me to sleep. I tried, but the day vibrated in my bones. I watched the monitor glow and counted the green blips. I listened for footsteps that did not come. When my eyes finally slid shut, Iris sighed in her sleep, and that sound was the softest anchor I had ever known. Dawn pressed at the blinds and painted the curtain a thin gold. I woke to the sound of paper shuffling and the click of a pen. Mendez stood by the bed hair, now in a looser knot, a coffee in her hand. She said the hearing was set for late afternoon. She said the judge would want everything. She said stories are loud, but records are louder. I nodded. Noah lifted the flash drive. Carla smiled at me like a coach before a race. You carried her through the hardest part, she said. Now we carry the rest with you. I pulled Iris closer and felt her tiny breath warm the inside of my elbow. Fear tugged at me. Hope tugged harder. My father's boot toe disappeared from the doorway. Somewhere in the hall, a printer spit out a docket. Sabrina rehearsed a speech to someone who didn't ask. Noah checked the time, and I stared at my daughter and made a quiet decision. No more begging, no more shrinking. When the gavel falls, I will stand and speak my name. Afternoon came fast, but the hours felt stretched thin like wire. Carla checked my vitals. Mendez arranged a video link, and Noah sat in the corner testing the flash drive on a hospital laptop until the little blue light glowed steady. Iris slept on my chest, warm and heavy, an anchor I could breathe against. The judge's clerk called at 3 and said the hearing would be remote from a conference room down the hall so I wouldn't have to leave postpartum. That small kindness felt like a gate opening. Mendez wheeled me in with the bassinet clipped to the side, set the screen at eye level, and explained the order of things in plain words I could hold. The feed connected and a courtroom appeared, wood paneling flags. The hum of whispers. Then Judge Banerjee took the bench and the whisper died. Sabrina sat at counsel table with a church friend in a blazer pretending to be support. Gideon was 2 seats back, hands folded too tight. Eyes low. When the judge called the case, Mendez gave our names and the reason for the emergency hearing. Sabrina stood first, quick to speak, and painted me in pale, careful strokes as unstable, desperate, and prone to lying. She said the church fund had vanished, the envelope last seen near the hall table where I often rummaged, and that a new mother in crisis needed structure, not chaos. She said it like a prayer. Judge Banerjee listened without blinking, then turned to Mendez. The judge's voice was calm and exact. She asked for evidence instead of adjectives. Mendez nodded to Noah. He stood within frame on our end and held the folder like a baton. He began with the garage camera backups Tess pulled from the cloud. The timestamp read 11:53 a.m. The clip showed the hallway table, the blue envelope, and Sabrina's hand sliding the envelope into a black tote. She looked toward the lens once, like a person checking a mirror, then turned away. Noah paused the frame. The still image filled the courtroom screen, and you could see the edge of a red manicure and the church logo peeking from the paper. Sabrina went still. She tried to say the video was deep-faked. Noah answered with the file logs from the cloud vendor hashes tied to a unique device ID and a note from the vendor's legal page explaining how tampering would alter those numbers. The bailiff leaned to see. The judge asked if we had more. Noah clicked to a bank summary Tess compiled. transfers from the church account to a store card ending in 927 registered to Sabrina H. Amounts of 102, 50, 55, 99 dates that matched deposit days on the church calendar Gideon kept on the fridge. Noah read 3 lines. The judge requested the PDF. Mendez had already uploaded it to the court portal. The clerk's screen lit with the same numbers. Sabrina's friend whispered behind her palm. The room changed temperature. I could feel it through pixels. When Sabrina tried to talk over the numbers, the judge raised one finger, and that was enough. Then Noah played the voicemail. Sabrina's voice slid into the room like perfume. If she's out before the baby comes, we can set things right. Gideon will thank me when it's quiet again. The sound hit me in the ribs. Gideon's face cracked like old paint. He stood without being asked, then sat when the judge told him to wait. My daughter stirred and fussed at the change in my breathing. I settled her with a finger on her back. The judge turned to me next. She asked clear questions about work care and where I'd live. I told her the truth. I had a job at the diner, a manager willing to give me the morning shift while I healed a sister with a spare room for 2 months while I searched for a place. I said I had prenatal records, no substances, no incidents, and that I wanted distance from a house that had turned into a trap. Mendez added that the hospital had done standard tox screens at birth, and all were negative. Carla submitted a short note confirming postpartum stability. The judge asked Officer Lenaro to speak. He kept it simple. He said I complied, that I was respectful under stress, and that he saw no safety issue around the baby while he was present. Sabrina tried again to shift the conversation back to character slurs, but the judge cut through it with one sentence. This court values facts. She turned to Gideon and asked if he wanted to make a statement. He stood hands trembling, and for a second, I thought he might find the courage to undo what he had done. Instead, he looked at Sabrina like a man drowning and said, I believed my wife. The judge let the words sit, then issued orders that landed like stones in a river that needed shaping. The temporary protection order was dissolved. The theft accusation was referred to a detective for fraud review. Sabrina was barred from contact with me or Iris pending that review. CPS would close any emergency hold request absent new evidence. Custody remained with me. The court set a follow-up in 2 weeks to check on resources and housing. It ended with the gavel and a silence that felt earned. Sabrina rose slow, face blank, and turned her back to the camera. Gideon didn't move for a full count of 5, then shuffled out behind her. The feed cut. The conference room exhaled. I stared at the blank screen until I saw my reflection, and not the courtroom. Noah sagged into a chair, laugh crying, squeezing his eyes with the heels of his hands. Mendez squeezed my shoulder once the exact pressure that says you're safe for this moment. Carla rolled the bassinet closer, and Iris made a small squeak like a bird discovering its voice. I kissed her hair and tasted salt and stubborn hope. 10 minutes later, my phone lit with a text from an unknown number. It was Gideon, the words halting and messy. Didn't know. Sorry. Talk tomorrow? I stared at it and let it sit. Tomorrow could wait. Tess burst into the room like a brisk wind, cheeks flushed from running. A lanyard of visitor badges slapping her chest. She smelled like cold air and coffee. She held up her own printouts and grinned at Noah. They had spent half the day tag-teaming problems I didn't know how to name. Tess kissed Iris and then looked at me with a long steadiness that said, I told you the night doesn't win. We made a plan in plain steps. I would discharge in the morning if the doctor agreed. Tess would take us to her place. Noah would file duplicates of everything with the detective before anyone could misplace a file. Mendez would send her summary to the court and to CPS. Carla would teach me how to wrap and bathe and rest without tearing the stitches life had already given me. The simplicity of tasks felt like prayer beads. Later, alone with Iris, a thought uncoiled. Sabrina had fixated on me, but the paper trail said she had been moving money for months. Church funds were only one stream. Dad's account had those soda machine withdrawals on odd days. The ceramic pig had seemed lighter last week. The blue envelope was the excuse, not the prize. What else had she built from our quiet? I opened my notes app and typed a list check. Dad's credit report asked Noah about the store card. Find out if Sabrina has a P.O. box. Ask Mrs. Alvarez about the day of the envelope. Breadcrumbs that led past one courtroom and into whatever came next. My phone buzzed again. A final text from an unknown prepaid line read, "Enjoy your win. Babies cry at night. So do liars. No signature." The number bounced when I tried to call. Sabrina had left the courthouse without the show she loved. She would not stay calm for long. I breathed slow and fed Iris again. The world shrank and then widened, and both sizes fit. Near midnight, the detective called. He had the file already and wanted the flash drive in person at 8. Noah agreed to meet him in the lobby. The detective's voice carried the stripped-down tone of people who build cases for a living. He asked a handful of clean questions, made no promises, and said one careful thing. Things like this rarely start at the amount people pick for the fight. After the call, the floor's quiet returned. Monitors hummed. A janitor's cart squeaked past the door. Iris' dream twitched, and her fingers closed around air, like she was holding onto something only she could see. I whispered the story of her birth again into the soft curl of her ear, a map she could carry without weight. When I finally slept, it was the first sleep in months not broken by listening for footsteps in the hall. At dawn, Carla woke me with tea and tests and a checklist. Discharge by noon if all stayed steady. Tess texted a photo of a crib she had borrowed from a neighbor and a stack of tiny onesies folded like napkins. Noah wrote that he had met the detective and made 2 more backups in case the cloud rains. And a new message from Gideon waited unseen while I changed Iris and learned the trick of small sleeves over smaller fingers. I didn't open it yet. I had one more call to make first. I dialed the church treasurer, Mrs. Duffy, the one who always wore sunflower pins and counted donations twice. When I told her about the hearing, she didn't gasp. She sighed like someone who had been waiting for the sky to admit rain. She said inventory had been off for months, and she hadn't known who to question without blowing up a marriage and a congregation. She promised to come by with ledgers after supper. I thanked her and looked at Iris. The shape of the larger truth began to outline itself behind the old hurt. This wasn't only about me, it was about a story Sabrina had written in other people's names. Part 3 closed with a discharge paper on the clipboard and a car seat Tess buckled one notch at a time. We were going home to a different address and a narrower circle. Safety is a small room with a sturdy door, but as we rolled toward the elevator, I felt the shift under my feet. The real fight had changed fields, and in Part 4, I would step onto it with my child in my arms and my name in my mouth. Tessa's apartment smelled like cinnamon and laundry soap, a clean square of quiet 3 floors above a street that never fully slept. She slid Iris's car seat onto the rug, and I watched my daughter blink at the light, then yawn like a cat. Safety felt small and solid, not loud, not grand, just a door that latched and a lock that clicked. Tess set tea on the counter and handed me a keyring. "You live here now," she said, matter of fact, 2 months or more. No questions asked. Noah texted from the lobby that the detective Rios, mid-40s, tired eyes, straight spine, had the drive and would circle back after talking to the church treasurer. I finally opened Gideon's message. It was a scramble of half-words and pauses. The apology of a man who does not know how to name what he broke. I put the phone face down. Boundaries could be a kind thing when built right. At dusk, Mrs. Duffy arrived with a tote of ledgers and a bakery box tied with string. She hugged me and kissed Iris's hat, and then laid paper on the table like cards on a kitchen table game. Her columns were neat and stubborn. She had circled transfers that made no sense and cash counts that never matched envelopes. She tapped a page where a P.O. box payment appeared every quarter in cash under a name I didn't recognize, Harbor Ridge Crafts. Sabrina had no crafts. She had curated lies. Mrs. Duffy had noted the standing order for community supplies billed to a store card starting last winter. The last 4 digits matched 90227. The number sat on the page like a confession. Rios knocked, then took a seat and listened without interrupting a pen motionless in his hand. When Mrs. Duffy finished, he said the case already had shape. He'd pulled ATM camera stills tied to soda machine withdrawals and found Sabrina in a visor and sunglasses at odd hours. He had 2 additional names from Bank Alert's people who'd flagged card attempts and ignored the calls back. He asked if Sabrina had a storage unit. People who skim, he said quietly, hate clutter at home. Gideon's name was on a rental last year for a unit off Route 9 signed by authorized user SH, and my stomach turned. Rios asked if I'd object to a welfare check from CPS just to close the loop. I said no. Let all the lights turn on. An hour after he left, the buzzer rang again. Gideon stood in the hall in his work coat, eyes rimmed raw. He held his cap like a boy. Tess opened the door as far as the chain allowed. He looked at me and then at the bassinet, and the breath left him like he'd walked uphill. He asked if he could see Iris. I nodded because truth does not fear eyes. He stepped inside exactly 1 pace as if the floor might reject him. His hands shook. He looked small in a way I had never seen. I told him she eats every 2 hours, sleeps in little bursts, and hates cold wipes. Saying ordinary things about an ordinary baby made the room warmer. He nodded and swallowed hard. He said Sabrina had shown him a sonogram and a plastic test in a box and told him she'd lost our baby because of stress, that if he protected her, God would bless them with another. His voice cracked on the lie, as if he could finally hear it. He said he found a receipt stuck in a kitchen drawer for a storage unit and a note rotate boxes Friday in her perfect handwriting. He put a small brass key on the table. I saw my hand pick it up before I felt my fingers move. He said he would go with us, or he would not go at all, whatever I decided. I told him the detective had the case, and that if he wanted to do one right thing, he would meet Rios at the unit and not touch a single box. He nodded again and stepped back to the hall. At the door, he turned and said my name like it was a prayer and a wound. Tess slid the chain. Iris let out a tiny roar, then fell asleep again. The quiet after a plea is a strange thing. It makes you want to fill it, and it dares you not to. I chose not to. 2 hours later, the storage lot floodlights burned a cold white on gravel. Rios stood at the gate with a second detective and a camera bag. Gideon waited by his truck hat in his hands. The unit door rolled up with a rattle that hit a soft place in my chest. The smell inside was dust and paper and something sweet that had gone stale. Plastic totes lined one wall, labeled in Sabrina's careful script, seasonal church drive receipts. Pantry baby, a lie tidy enough to pass a glance. Rios photographed the locks and the labels before he cut the shrink wrap on a bin with gloved hands. Inside stacks of donation envelopes lay rubber-banded, some still sealed, plus gift cards that should have been logged, and a nest of receipts that told a story in numbers. He opened the one labeled baby. Inside, a lace blanket still in its shop bag, a package of newborn socks, a printout of a sonogram with the patient name blurred, but the clinic header visible 2 towns over. Rios held the paper to the light and showed us the pixel blocks where a name should be. It wasn't evidence of pregnancy. It was evidence of theater. He opened a smaller bin labeled pantry and found the ceramic pig from our kitchen belly slit with a utility knife and taped back. I heard Gideon make a sound that was not quite a word. The detective's camera clicked like a metronome. Near the back sat a box marked receipts. Inside a red folder lay a draft petition for guardianship, naming me unstable and unhoused with a typed letter, supposedly from Dietrich Henley, recommending temporary placement with grandparents. Rios compared signatures and said the doctor's name had the wrong middle initial. My jaw clenched so hard my temples ached. Then under the folder, a bag of prepaid phone cards and a crumpled slip with the number that had texted me last night. A breadcrumb trail that had stopped pretending it was anything else. Rios logged each item and spoke into a recorder. His partner bagged the evidence with a care that felt like respect. Gideon stood with his hand flat on the cold metal wall, as if he needed something unforgiving to hold him up. He whispered, "What have I done?" and no one answered because we were not the ones to lift that for him. The detective sealed the unit and logged the key. As the door rolled down, headlights turned onto the gravel. A dark sedan idled 2 spots over. I knew that silhouette behind the glass by how still it sat. Sabrina watched through the windshield without moving. She was good at not blinking. Rios looked right at her and lifted a palm in a wait motion. She pulled away, slow. No squeal. No show, just a soft ghost into the road. When we got back to Tess's CPS, arrived for the welfare check, a woman named Cor with a knit scarf and a notebook thick with sticky tabs. She had the judge's order in her folder and a printout of Mendez's report. She spoke to me in the calm, practical way of people who have held too many stories at 2 a.m. She examined Iris's tiny fingers and watched me latch her and asked about safe sleep and support and plans. Tess walked her through our lists. Noah gave her copies of the court filings. The visit ended with the word documented and a small smile. Cor said she would close the emergency file and note the fraud investigation. She said I could call her cell if anything changed. When the door shut, the apartment felt light enough to breathe all the way down. I texted Mrs. Duffy to rest. I told Gideon the unit had been secured. He sent back a single word thanks, and then nothing, which was better than a flood he didn't know how to stop. I fed Iris and let my mind march through tomorrow. The detective would interview 2 church board members and pull the registration on Harbor Ridge Crafts, while Mrs. Duffy would email the auditor. Noah would escort Gideon to the bank so he couldn't be steered. I would meet Mendez at noon to notarize a statement and file for a no-contact order that covered Tess's address. It was the first time in a long time I felt I could plan beyond the next hour. Around midnight, my phone buzzed again. A video link from an unknown account opened to a live view of the hallway outside our apartment, the peephole of someone's door catching the reflection of our number. A message followed baby's wake easy. The same prepaid number. My skin went cold. I checked the chain twice. Tess called building security, and Noah grabbed the baseball bat he kept by the couch like a joke until now. Then a third text landed only 3 words. Step outside, sweetheart. I looked at Iris asleep and unaware, and felt the old fear try to climb my throat. It did not get far. I dialed Rios, put the phone on speaker, and told him we had a stalker at the door who liked cameras and threats. His voice was all edge now. Do not open, he said. We're on our way. The hallway camera flickered in the video like a breathing lung. Footsteps passed and paused. A soft scrape on our doormat sounded like someone drawing a line with a key. The next ding was a photo taken from the other side of the peephole, a close-up of our lock. The chain bright in the flash, and part 4 ended with the weight of a hand on our side of the door, and the knowledge that the proof we found had cut, and the cut had bled, and the person who did not blink had decided to stop pretending she was far away. I held my breath and counted to 4 while the video stream stuttered. The peephole view shook like a nervous eye and then steadied. Tess stood beside the door with the chain tight and the deadbolt set. Noah kept one hand on the bat and the other on his phone. Iris slept through it, chest lifting under a cotton cloud of a blanket. I whispered to her anyway, a small promise that I would not open, not this time. The next text buzzed, and I read it aloud so there would be no confusion. Step outside, sweetheart. Noah said he had the recording app running. Tess muted the TV and checked the window latch. I called Rios back and put him on speaker. His voice lost the calm of paperwork and gained the edge of a street call. Do not engage lights on, stay away from windows, he said. 2 minutes out. The camera feed caught a sleeve moving past the lens, pale coat, narrow wrist. A glint of metal near the lock. A soft scrape whispered along the chain plate. Someone was trying the old trick with a loop of nylon. Tess slid her palm over the chain so it could not lift even a breath. I said her name into the wood, even though she had not given it. Sabrina Leave. The scraping stopped, and a laugh pressed through the crack, low and sweet and familiar. I imagined her mouth, right against the peephole, smiling for her own reflection. She said the building camera belonged to a friend, and no one would see the feet that came and went if they knew how to ask nice. My skin prickled. Then a deeper breath on the other side, and the nylon slipped loose. Footsteps retreated, then came back. A click like a lighter. Tess whispered fire and grabbed the extinguisher, but the smell that slid under the door was only perfume and peppermint. Showmanship. The elevator dinged, and the steps sped up. Rios knocked 3 times and said our names and a number only we would know. I slid the chain long enough to see his badge, then locked up again until he ordered me to open fully. There were 2 uniforms with him, and a woman in plain clothes I recognized from the storage unit. Rios cupped his hand over the peephole and peered down the hall. He pointed low to a scuff on our mat. A key line, not a note. He sent one uniform to the stairwell and one to the elevator and spoke into his radio in short bursts. Sabrina tried to melt into the shadow by the mailboxes, but her coat was white and the hall was cream and nothing disappeared. When the officer reached her, she dropped a flat zip case like it was hot. Lockpicks clinked and skittered. The prepaid phone in her pocket buzzed 3 times with the texts she had set to auto. Rios asked her name, and she gave it without looking at me. The calm left her eyes and a different light arrived, the one people get when the story they wrote does not match the scene. She started soft checking on the baby. Worried about my mental state, thought a welfare check might be needed, thought she heard crying. But her voice caught the wrong ends of the words. Rios read the judge's order barring contact and the statute for witness intimidation and the clause about attempts to enter a dwelling. He recited each piece with the weight of someone who had said them before. He paused where the handcuffs clicked. Sabrina did not fight, not in the way that leaves marks. She fought with her eyes, flicking from me to Tess to the bassinet like she was trying to choose which of us would blink first. I did not. They walked her down the hall and past the lens that had given me her view. The camera watched her go and saved the timestamp for later. The second phone in her pocket kept buzzing. The uniform pulled it out and showed Rios the thread. "Enjoy your win. Babies cry at night. Step outside, sweetheart." The names were blank. The numbers were not. He bagged both phones and the pics and the nylon. He stood in our doorway with his pen still in his pocket and let out a slow breath like pressure leaving a pipe. He told us to pack a small bag and come to the precinct to make clean statements while they still had her in booking. I strapped Iris into the carrier against my chest and felt her warmth settle my hands. Tess gathered the folder and the crib receipt and a handful of diapers and texted Mrs. Duffy so she would not show up in the middle of it. Noah locked behind us and checked the stairwell so we would not ride down with a surprise. Outside, the squad lights painted the brick with red and blue. Our breath made small ghosts in the cold. At the station, the fluorescent hum was the same as the night I gave birth, but I was not in cuffs now. I sat with Mendez, who had come down when Rios called and told the story in clear steps, no extras. She wrote it into boxes that made sense to someone who would not read my face. Noah showed the texts and the video. Tess described the nylon and the lock. Rios added the storage unit list and the church ledgers and the prepaid numbers. It built into a shape even a stranger could see. When they moved Sabrina past the desk toward holding, she turned her head just enough to speak to Gideon, who had come in from the lot and stood by the water fountain like a man waiting for a verdict. She said his name like it was a wire he had to climb. She said she only wanted to protect him from a daughter who stole and shamed and broke his home. The word home cracked my throat. Gideon did not answer her. His eyes were on the evidence table where the ceramic pig sat in a clear bag with blue tape. There was a smudge of dust on the pig's ear, and he stared at that instead of her. Rios asked if Gideon wanted counsel. He shook his head and repeated the same sentence twice, as if saying it might make sense. "I signed the order," she wrote. "I signed the order," she wrote. Rios took his statement, placed it in the file, and then called the on-duty prosecutor. Things moved fast after that. Burglary tools violation of a no-contact order, attempted unlawful entry witness, intimidation fraud under review. None of it was the big case alone, but together the stack looked tall enough to matter. Bail would be argued in the morning. Sabrina's friend in the blazer arrived with her mouth tight and her phone held like a shield. She whispered to a public defender and glared at me over the rim of the lobby magazine she did not read. Noah leaned against the vending machine and sent a calm text to Mrs. Duffy, and the board detective needs the minutes from the last 3 finance meetings. Tess called Core and left a message that the emergency file could note an arrest. I fed Iris in a quiet room while a clock clicked as loud as my heart. I thought of all the nights I had swallowed small things to keep the peace, and how peace had never been the thing I bought. When we came back to the hall, Gideon asked if he could see Iris up close. I let him. Because boundaries were not only walls. They were doors with hinges and rules. He took one step, looked at her tiny fist tucked under her chin, and unraveled. He said I was wrong, I was wrong. Soft, as if the words had edges. I told him I would not carry his emptiness, but I would listen to what he did next. He said he would go with Rios in the morning and sign whatever let them into the accounts. He said he had canceled the storage unit and the P.O. box and the store card. He said he had told Pastor Ellis to freeze the church fund until the audit was done. He said he had not slept. I believed that part. At dawn, the courtroom filled with a different air. Small hearings make a different noise than trials. Papers rustle. Shoes hush. The public defender asked for low bail with conditions. She said Sabrina had community ties and no record. Rios took the stand and laid out the text, the pics. The attempt at my door, the storage box labeled baby with the wrong name sonogram, the bank logs, the cloud source, the call logs from the prepaid. The prosecutor used fewer words than I expected, and all of them had weight. Judge Banerjee listened and then spoke like a scale. She said a person who stands in a hallway outside a newborn's door with tools and threats is not a safe person to bail to that hallway. Ramon, she ruled pending arraignment on added counts. Sabrina's shoulders lifted once and then flattened. She did not turn to look at Gideon. He did not lift his eyes. The gavel landed and the room emptied in thin lines. We stepped into the cold light of the morning with a list from Rios and a time from Mendez. The board would meet that night. Duffy would present the ledgers without apology. Cor would close her file and send a letter I could put with the birth certificate. Noah would back up the backups and then lock them in a safe that did not live in anyone's kitchen. Tess would drive us home with the heat on high and music low. Gideon asked if he could carry the diaper bag down the courthouse steps. I let him because that was a weight he could learn. In the car, Iris yawned like the world was new every hour, which it was. I stared at her and felt something settle. Not an end, not yet. An edge. That night at the church hall, the folding chairs made their metal chorus, and the board sat in a crooked row. Faces I had known since Sunday school watched me with a mix of pity and relief. Up is. Duffy cleared her throat and started with the numbers. She did not say my name until the end, and when she did, she said it like a fact, not a rumor. I stood and spoke for 3 minutes with my voice steady. I said theft hides in places that feel holy because no one wants to look there. I said a baby is not a cover for a crime or a trophy for a clean image. I said the money had one job, and it was not to build a life that belonged to one person. I said thank you to the people who brought ledgers instead of whispers. When I sat down, an old man who had built pews with his own hands wiped his eyes with a handkerchief from his sleeve. It was not triumph. It was a door creaking on hinges that had rusted. After the vote to retain an outside auditor, Pastor Ellis asked if anyone wanted to speak. Gideon stood and said he had failed his daughter. His voice did not carry far, but it carried enough. He said he would sit in the back pew until he learned how to be a man who turned toward instead of away. I did not clap, and I did not cry. I breathed and held my child and waited for the next thing on the list. When we got home, the hallway was quiet. The mat was clean. The chain slid into its notch with a sound that felt like a full stop. I laid Iris in the borrowed crib and sat on the edge of the bed and wrote the last task of the night in my notes app, Sleep. I smiled when I typed it. Simple and radical. I closed my eyes to the hum of the heater and the soft breath of a newborn. The phone did not buzz. The camera stayed dark. A good night in a small room, and part 5 closed with me choosing rest over the ache to guard every second, because the fight had shape now, and so did my life, and tomorrow had its own list waiting. Spring came back to Harbor Ridge with soft rain and a sky that finally looked like it knew how to forgive. 6 months had passed since the hallway, since the lockpicks, since the files that stripped the story down to bones. Iris could roll to her side now and laugh without sound, a gummy grin that reset the room. We lived in a small studio over a florist, one window facing west. One sturdy deadbolt I checked once and not 10 times. Work at the diner shifted to mornings when Tess could keep Iris, and nights belonged to bathwater clean pajamas. and the low hum of a white noise app that felt like the ocean. Our days were simple lists that stacked into something that felt like a life. At the courthouse, Sabrina took a plea rather than roll the dice in front of a jury that had already seen the footage and the ledger. Fraud, attempted unlawful entry, witness, intimidation, possession of burglary tools. The judge read the counts like fence posts, then set 3 years in state with restitution and a no-contact term that stretched longer than Iris's kindergarten line. She did not look for me when the deputies led her out. She stared at the floor like it might open and give her an easier exit. The church audit finished a week later. Mrs. Duffy wore her sunflower pin and walked the board through the numbers. Money had vanished in small bites over many months, 100 here, 50, they're gift cards that never hit a log. The board voted to bring in an outside firm for a year and to rebuild the fund in public view. People dropped envelopes in the plate without looking around to see who watched. The trust did not come back in a day, but it returned the way dawn does, slow and sure, and mostly quiet. Detective Rios stopped by the diner one morning and ordered black coffee and eggs over hard, and told me the case file had closed clean. He shook Noah's hand and thanked him for the cloud trail, then nodded toward Iris in her carrier, like he was saluting a very small general. Mendez sent a short email with a longer attachment and a line that read, "When your world goes small, it is not always a loss." Core's letter came by mail with a seal that looked like a wreath. "No safety concerns," it said, and I kept that paper behind the birth certificate like a second kind of name. I started a bookkeeping course at the community college on Tuesdays and Thursdays because ledgers had saved me once, and math felt like ground that does not move. The numbers clicked when my head was too noisy. I made budgets that covered rent and formula and a sitter for 6 hours a week. I paid Tess back in small stacks of 20s, not because she asked, but because paying your people is another way to say you intend to stay. Neighbors learned Iris's cries and rhythms. Mrs. Alvarez took her on the stoop for 15 minutes every afternoon to let me shower without a baby monitor balanced on the sink. The florist downstairs saved the stems they trimmed and tucked them into a jar by our mailbox once a week. The street did what streets do when they forgive you for surviving. Gideon did not vanish. He did not try to move in or explain his choices in paragraphs. He learned to ask before he stepped over thresholds. We met at the park on Sundays under a maple that had survived 3 storms and 3 pastors. He sat on a bench with his hands open and watched Iris squeeze his finger like a lever. He did not talk about Sabrina. He asked about diaper sizes and pediatrician visits, and if the stroller squeak could be fixed with a drop of oil. He went to therapy in a building that used to be a pharmacy and sat in a circle with men who had built lives on certainty and were learning how to live without it. He sold the tool chest he loved and put half the money into the kumshit restitution account and the other half into a fund for Iris he could not withdraw from without 2 signatures. He wrote letters to people he had hurt and did not mail them until he had read them out loud to someone who would tell him if the words were for him or for us. At sentencing, he tried to speak and could not. You could see the words stick in his throat like a bad fishbone. Since then, he has said less and done more. Sometimes silence is not a punishment. It is an agreement with yourself to let your hands speak first. He knows he cannot fix the night he chose the wrong door to stand behind. He can fix a leaky faucet and a wobbly chair. He started there. Months folded into each other like laundry. Noah took a part-time job with the auditor and kept calling it temp, even as his eyes lit when he talked about chain of custody. Tess crocheted a blanket the size of a small field and draped it over the back of my couch like armor. Pastor Ellis preached once on the danger of certainty, dressed as care, and then went back to the gospel like the ground it misses. Duffy did not accept a single apology that came without action attached. The florist gave me a potted fern that I have somehow kept alive. Every week I throw out one thing that smells like the old house: a chipped mug, a cracked frame, a habit of apologizing for existing. The court sent a notice 2 months ago that the no-contact order had been extended on new facts tied to the storage unit. I slept hard that night and woke surprised to find I had not listened for footsteps. Sometimes victory is a shift so small you only see it when you stand still and look back. There were days that were not clean. Iris got a fever, and I panicked and woke Tess, and we drove to urgent care in slippers. My boss at the diner changed the schedule with 12 hours notice, and I said no for the first time and did not get fired. A woman in line at the grocery whispered a rumor with the shape of my old shame, and I kept moving because shame is a trap built for standing still. One afternoon, a postcard arrived from the state prison. No return name, a picture of a lighthouse. I handed it to Rios, and he added it to a file and told me I did not have to read words I did not ask for. I threw the image away and bought a nightlight for Iris with a soft whale that glows blue. It is a better ocean. I am not noble. I am not bitter. I am busy. I am learning how to be soft on the people who earned it and hard on the walls that need it. I keep a photo of me in handcuffs next to a photo of me holding Iris new and pink and furious. They are not opposites. They are the same person at two doors. Sometimes I stand at the window after she sleeps and let the evening come in like rain. I count the steps we took from a cell to a bench under a maple to a room with one lock and many lists. I remember the first kick, the first cry, the first time I said my name in court without shaking. I think about Sabrina the way you think about a storm you survived. Not every cloud needs a forecast. Some just pass and leave damage you fix with neighbors and time. I do not hate, I do not forgive beyond my own circle. I let the system do its job while I do mine. One day, Iris will ask about her first year. I will tell her she was born the night thunder did not get what it wanted. I will tell her that 100 small hands held us up, not one hero. I will tell her that truth is slow sometimes, and still it wins if you keep showing up with your receipts and your breath and your name. If you've been listening this far, tell me this in the comments so I can learn from you the way you learned from me. Where does forgiveness end and boundary begin? And if your father came back with his hands open and his mouth closed, would you let him hold your child on a Sunday under a maple? Or would you wave from the path and keep walking? Tell me what time you're watching and where from. Because somewhere a woman like me is holding a door from the inside, and she needs proof that the next turn can be hers.